In business today, three things to know. First, China and the U.S. vow to clear the air. The two announce a major initiative to cut greenhouse emissions, but China doesn't have to do anything for 16 years.
Well, I would like to survive long enough to see the effects of global warming.
Why critics are saying China is promising, in fact, to do just about nothing. Then, net play. The White House is calling for new regulations aimed at enforcing net neutrality. But can the government really ensure a free and open internet, or will regulations lead to stifled competition and higher prices? And they did it again. The IRS seizes the assets of a New York business without ever proving any wrongdoing. We'll meet the owner, who says the government took his money for no reason at all, and he wants it back. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. President Obama left China with a major deal on climate change. For the first time, the Chinese have agreed to do something to reduce pollution. Now, what exactly that something is, well, that is open for debate, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. The deal has the U.S. promising to reduce greenhouse gases by 26 to 28% by 2025. The Chinese are not promising to reduce their greenhouse emissions at all, but say they will cap emissions by 2030. Now, that's seen as a victory because China had previously dodged making any promises. While President Obama hailed the agreement, Senate Majority Leader-elect Mitch McConnell slammed it.
This is an ambitious goal, but it is an achievable goal. It will double the pace at which we're reducing carbon pollution in the United States. It puts us on a path to achieving the deep emissions reductions by advanced economies that the scientific community says is necessary to prevent the most catastrophic effects of climate change.
I was particularly distressed by the deal apparently he's reached with the Chinese on his current trip, which, as I read the agreement, requires the Chinese to do nothing at all for 16 years, while these carbon emission regulations are creating havoc in my state and other states around the country.
We will talk with our own James Blue in a few minutes about the agreement and what really the Chinese plan to do. But first, Wall Street flirted with another record on Wednesday. Let's take a look at the final numbers. The Dow finished down 2.70 points to 17,612. The S&P 500 down a fraction as well. The Nasdaq did have an up day. Some of the top stocks we're watching today. Walmart announcing it will turn the Black Friday shopping day into 5 days. The largest retailer in the U.S. is dropping the one-day sales traditionally seen after Thanksgiving and expanding holiday sales offers on the internet. Walmart closing up 19 cents. JCPenney, remembering them, well, they earned third quarter earnings release today. JCPenney reported a loss of 77 cents a share, which was 2 cents better than forecasted. The CEO said the figures show that JCPenney is on track in the last phase of its turnaround. JCPenney up half a dollar. Macy's says it beat third quarter profit estimates with EPS of 61 cents, boosted by falling costs. The company, formerly known as Federated Department Stores, also projects sales to increase this holiday season. Macy's up nearly $3. And let's take a look at commodities. Gold down $3.70 and oil down $1.17. By the way, the Saudis said today that there was, quote, a misunderstanding about a so-called price war within OPEC, but the Saudis did not clarify further, probably helping to drive down prices. Now, back to the Chinese on climate control. As we mentioned, President Obama has a deal in hand with China on cutting greenhouse emissions. What's in it? Arise Washington Bureau Chief James Blue joins us now from D.C. with the latest on that and information on the president's next stop in Asia. James, good afternoon. Why don't you bring us up to date on this climate control bill?
Well, you know, basically this agreement between China and the United States is largely symbolic. It gets the two major emitting countries on record agreeing to actually reduce the emissions that they produce. Now, the complaints about the deal is that the sort of the requirements on China don't take effect for a number of years. But Andrew, let me just give you a sense of the scope. By the year 2030, when China will actually have to, step up and adhere to this agreement, China is agreeing to produce 800 to 1,000 gigawatts of zero-emission energy. That's nuclear, wind, and solar. And that's about, That's more than the energy they're currently producing with coal plants, and that's almost the total current of energy being produced in the United States today.
James,
So people can, dog the deal, but there is a significant commitment to zero emissions.
Okay, so Mitch McConnell, though, he says that we're promising to reduce our emissions by more than a quarter over the next 10 years. And he says that that's going to drive factories to China, which is going to increase pollution. Mitch McConnell's never been a friend, of course, of the environmentalists, but he says this deal is going to be worse because China is going to increase emissions. Any truth to that?
Well, I mean, so Andrew, you sort of do the math. Would companies really decide that they're going to pack up in the United States, head to China, and face similar constraints in China, sort of 10 years down the line? Sure, there are some savings that can be had, but are you really going to sort of try to lose that current investment, invest in a new place in China, and still be in the same place?
Why do you think the Chinese came around on this point now?
I think China is trying to figure out ways to ally with the U.S. There are places where there are lots of disagreements, and this was an opportunity to sort of come back into the world stage, try to promote the climate change, the environment ahead of the G20 meeting in Australia this weekend, and it really allows the U.S. and China to go into that meeting really stronger. And
neither of these people are likely to be in office. Certainly President Obama won't be when these have to go into effect. Let's turn to Myanmar, which is where the president is right now. The country there is a little bit of a train wreck right now. They're having a lot of problems. What is the president hoping to get out of this?
Well, he's hoping to get out of there sort of unscathed and without much mud on him. You may recall during the first administration of President Barack Obama, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton really championed the former country known as Burma, now it's Myanmar. They released the longtime dissident Aung San Suu Kyi, and people thought that they were headed toward democracy. It was a military junta, and they were controlling everything. But, it turns out the road to progress has sort of been stalled. They haven't had elections. The former dissident hasn't been able to form a party. And the U.S. Actually lifted sanctions, hoping that U.S. business would help get things moving toward democracy. It hasn't happened. The Obama administration is sort of in a quandary as to what to do, and he's going to get out of town as quickly as possible.
But a little bit brave that he's going there anyway to try to at least do something. James Boone, Washington, D.C., thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, time to take a side in net neutrality. We'll help you walk through all of the issues. You're watching Arise Exchange. Stay with us.
There is a reason Africa is called the new frontier. What was once potential is now an opportunity ready to be seized. Once revered for our resources, today's wealth lies in our people. People who build the cities that shape the future. People who know an idea in one place means business in another. A generation for whom technology means there are no borders, no boundaries. We are the new lions in a brave new world, kings of the urban jungle. And there's a bank that puts the world in our pocket and the future in our hands. UBA, Africa's global bank.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. AT&T announcing Wednesday that it will delay upgrading its network pending a resolution on net neutrality. The timing might be a little cynical there, I would say. AT&T and other internet providers oppose the current White House plan to regulate the internet as if it's a utility. Proponents of net neutrality say it's needed to prevent large companies from discriminating against smaller content providers by charging fees for speed. For example, Netflix recently agreed to pay for faster delivery of its content. Opponents, meantime, say net neutrality will actually lead to higher prices and less innovation. Well, here to help explain the issue is Ivan Drucker. He is CEO of Ivan Expert, Max Support, a boutique technology support firm here in New York. Ivan, welcome to Arise Exchange.
Thank you, Andrew.
All right, so the first question is, within a minute or so, tell us what net neutrality is.
Sure. So you are a customer of internet services. You go to your favorite websites, you go to your favorite content providers, and you can watch any of that stuff as you like it. Net neutrality says all of that should come to you at the same speed without anything in your way. So regardless of who you're getting your internet service from, they should not have any influence on what you get or how fast you get it.
Proponents of net neutrality say this is about big telecom and cable companies versus the little guy and the little consumers. But is it also really about telecom versus Netflix? Because Netflix is a proponent of net neutrality. Netflix eats up something like 30% of all of the internet traffic in the entire country. I'm not a Netflix subscriber. Why should I be paying for their speed?
Sure. There are two sides to this story, and you can't argue it from either side. And Netflix is a factor. Between Netflix and YouTube, that's a lot of content. The argument is that how do you start up your own startup company once you have a bunch of big providers that have essentially made deals with the person bringing you your internet to bring you that content?
So the opponents of net neutrality, which are, of course, the cable industry, for example, say
Yes.
that's not going to happen. So Michael Powell, who used to be the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission,
Right.
And is now the head of the National Cable and Telecommunications Association, their lobby group, says he's stunned that the president, quote, would abandon the long-standing bipartisan policy of lightly regulating the internet and calling for the extreme, what they call Title II regulation, which is to declare the internet a utility. Does he have a point here? Because when the internet has been free and unregulated, look at how it has exploded and blossomed, and now just about anybody can afford to access it. The second you regulate it, isn't there a concern of prices going up, or that service overall will just hit a bottom?
There's always that concern, and I'm not a proponent of regulating any more than you have to. But it is also true that the internet has blossomed because anybody can have a voice on it at a minimal cost and be able to get their message to a customer without that message being blocked. Furthermore, these big telecoms are also content providers themselves, which puts them into competitive situations where they might want to block a competitor's service. So they can say that won't happen, but what will prevent it?
Well, and I think that's what the F.C.C. is looking at, because the chairman of the current F.C.C., the current chairman, who is appointed by President Obama but does not support at the moment officially the White House version, is looking for some middle ground. Do you think that's what's going to happen here?
I think it is actually what will happen. You know, there will be some regulation about, okay, you can't exactly block content, you can't pay for favorites. There will be some middle ground. I would be surprised if it goes full on utility.
Because what the cable companies do, they own content providers as well, and they are blocked from borrowing their competitors, and I could see some sort of middle ground basically saying that.
Right. It's going to be similar because eventually all of our entertainment and content is going to come through the internet anyway, so I think that analogy is right.
The final argument, though, is that there is only so much bandwidth, and you take a Netflix, which is enormously popular, and you take the startup, but isn't. While the startup should have the same sort of platform, to give them the equal access without paying for it does seem like somebody is footing the bill for them to go.
Sure, and it's an argument. I don't think this is actually an easy question to answer, because if you are going to regulate this sort of thing, how and in what way?
And how are you going to pull that off?
And how are you going to pull that off?
Okay, Ivan Drucker, you are the CEO of Ivan Expert. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll have you back on to talk about it as it moves forward. Time now for our business ticker stories making headlines across the nation and the world. Yahoo investors are asking AOL to come to their rescue. That may sound like asking the Andrea Doria to bail out the Titanic, but such is the state of Yahoo right now. Top shareholders of the internet company are so unhappy with CEO Marissa Mayer's turnaround efforts, they are reportedly urging AOL boss Tim Armstrong to merge with Yahoo and run the combined company. The Spanish government is ticked off that Catalonia has voted for independence, and so Spain is now suing the Catalan president. I guess it's better than invading. On Monday, President Artur Mas defied a court injunction not to hold a vote on secession. Nearly 80% of Catalans adopted or accepted wanting to separate from Spain in the, quote, undercover referendum. The vote has, however, no impact legally on Spain. And Radio Shack wishes it was the 1980s again when people actually bought things from them. The barely in business electronics retailer has hired Weird Al Yankovic for its new holiday campaign, There He Is, which is 1980s themed. Take a listen.
Joyland, they'll be inspired, it's so grand. This is where you always start when you're wanting to give smart.
For the record, I think that commercial had more people in a Radio Shack store than have been in a Radio Shack store in the past 10 years. Radio Shack also announced this week that it would kick off the holiday season by opening many of its stores Thanksgiving morning, hoping somebody would notice. Student debt is growing at a staggering 11% a year, the top reason the growing balloon of student loan debt. The money coach, Lynette Khalfani-Cox, who is the author of College Secrets, How to Save Money, Cut Costs, and Graduate Debt-Free, joins us, and what we can do about this. Welcome to the program.
Right,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So the real question is, why the balloon in student loan costs?
Right. I think there's a number of factors at play here and why we're seeing such runaway higher education costs. First is a supply and demand issue. You know, certainly in America, getting a higher education degree, getting that bachelor's is part of the American dream. And a lot of families will sacrifice anything to get their kid the degree from the right school.
Yeah.
So a lot of top schools, Ivy League schools, top 30 schools, et cetera, they're in demand, so people will pay a premium for those schools. That's one reason. The second reason is...
So tuition costs are more.
Right. Well, everything costs a lot more.
more.
Housing is a lot more expensive, room and board, et cetera. But another reason is that a lot of colleges are on sort of a buying spree to boost their reputation. So they're building a lot of stuff. New athletic facilities, new dorm rooms, new buildings, new libraries. Of course, they've got a lot of high-cost faculty, staff, and administrators to go along with that. Who do you think pays for that? We do as parents.
You know,
That's
but
right.
also when you look at the student loans, I mean, somebody recently said that your car loan has a lower interest rate than your student loans. And there seems to be a little bit of a racket going on here because you lock in students for loans that you pay off over 20 years or more.
Right.
You cannot erase the loans through bankruptcy in most cases. Do we need to rethink how we pay for college?
I think we definitely need to rethink how we pay for college because certainly there are a number of alternatives before you even should think about taking out loans. You can get scholarships, grants, paid internships. There are work study options. And then, of course, the family, their own resources. If grandma wants to kick in money, say, for a tuition bill as opposed to buying, holiday gifts, that's great. But then you raise a good question about how, this is going to get paid for on the back end and about interest rates and things of that nature. Certainly in the U.S., Congress sets the interest rates annually on federal loans. They're relatively low. Could they be lower? Absolutely. But you have 4 different repayment options. So you mentioned 20 years. That's for some who get an extended loan repayment program. If you stick to the standard loan repayment program, you'll pay off those loans in 10 years. And then there's income-based repayment as well.
So for people looking to go to college, you should look at options that will reduce your debt burden, right?
Right.
First, where can you raise money elsewhere?
Right. So the scholarships and grants that I talked about. But then there's other ways to just cut costs so that you don't have to take out a loan in the first place. You can look at tuition-free colleges. You can look at work-study colleges. You can certainly think about going overseas. Germany just announced before that, nobody's going to pay for tuition, including
and by the way,
U.S. students.
And they look at and Europeans look at a very different model of college. You go to college knowing what you want to do when you go in.
Right.
Nobody does that here. In fact, we say, don't worry.
You can be undeclared.
You'll be undeclared. You'll figure it out, and then you graduate, and you have no idea what you want
Right.
to do. Which takes me to the next question: are too many people going to college? Peter Thiel, of course, the founder of PayPal, says college for many is a waste of time. He's very controversial on that, but it's an interesting debate.
I certainly think that college can be a stepping stone to a better life for a lot of people. It can certainly lift a lot of people, middle-class families, first-generation students, minorities, immigrants, et cetera, out of poverty. The data is very clear that if you have a higher education degree in the United States, you're going to earn, on average, about $1 million over a lifetime of earnings compared to the person who only has a high school diploma. So that's a good financial case. But we have to start factoring in this increasing debt burden that a lot of people are taking on as well, because people aren't just paying it off in 5 or 10 years. They're extending those loans over time. So the financial value of a degree is, in fact, diminishing. I tell families, look, if your kid doesn't know what they want to do, you don't have to send them to a 4-year school right away. You can do the 2-year option. Community college, obviously, is a lot cheaper. Just make sure those credits do transfer.
Maybe we need to bring back some sort of apprenticeship. Lynette, you're the author of College Secrets, How to Save Money, Cut Costs, and Graduate Debt-Free. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
Appreciate it. Ahead, plagiarizing your way to a new book deal will make our favorite person of the day. You're watching Arise Exchange.
Apple unveiled new products today. Did it meet expectations?
Apple stock is up 20%.
The White House says it has proper measures to contain the spread of Ebola. This seems to be, in some ways, exploding. What are officials saying?
We remain focused on working with our partners on the ground to stop the epidemic.
Enhanced measures have been put in place in Africa and the United States.
This is hitting home in a very real way, and I think, yeah, we need to be concerned.
Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
Last week on Arise Exchange, the nauseating numbers from two iconic brands and whether they have a plan to turn around their businesses. Existing home sales surged to their best numbers. Can the broader markets support that in the real estate business?
When long-term interest rates are low, it's usually a bad sign for the macro economy.
Toys R Us is defending its decision to sell Breaking Bad action figures. The toys come with a detachable sack of cash and a bag of meth. Not real meth, fake meth. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange. Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention, and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a so-called journalist who proves anyone can get a book deal, providing you're willing to make up enough facts. According to the website Gawker, Jonah Lehrer, a former Wall Street Journal reporter, has a new deal to write a book with a UCLA professor. Literary folks will remember Lehrer for his perpetual habit of plagiarism. First, he admitted to making up quotes in his 2012 book about Bob Dylan. It was so bad, the publisher recalled the books and destroyed them. Then, Lehrer confirmed he made up facts and stories he wrote for the Wall Street Journal, The New Yorker, Wired, and other publications. Now, you'd think that'd be enough to force Lehrer into maybe a different career. But then, publisher Simon & Schuster gave him an advance to write a book about love and redemption, saying they believe in second chances. Turns out he plagiarized the proposal for that book. Still not enough? Now, publisher Portfolio thinks Lehrer is, quote, one of the most talented writers of our generation and have greenlighted his new book. So, for not letting the facts get in the way of your own career, Jonah Lehrer is our favorite person of the day. Coming up, how the IRS is seizing the money of Americans without ever proving they broke the law. We'll meet a business owner who it happened to. You're watching Rise Exchange. Last week on Arise Exchange, a victory lap for Republicans while Democrats lick their wounds.
The Democrats are saying they just didn't have a ground game.
Gold prices fell sharply today as the dollar soared in the wake of the U.S. elections. Zachary Torrance says he tried the Subway diet, and when it failed, he decided that he would rob 4 Subway sandwich shops in 4 days as revenge for his inability to lose weight. Now he will be on a prison diet. Watch this week for more Arise Exchange.
The search continues for the more than 200 abducted schoolgirls.
Unquestionably, this is a Nigerian problem.
President Barack Obama stopped short of visiting the border. Why can't Washington get anything done when it comes to immigration reform?
But you got to come up with a solution to it, and no one has a real solution.
Does this further terrorize people, make them more afraid, or is this making people angry? Hello and welcome to Arise America. I'm Debbie Turner-Bell.
It's called civil forfeiture, a very controversial policy enforced by the IRS to seize bank accounts deemed, quote, suspicious. Under the law, the government can take control of bank accounts only on suspicion and keep the money that is thought to have been obtained legally without any proof. Our next guest knows all too well about this. Small business owner Jeff Hirsch had almost $500,000 frozen by the IRS for nearly 2 years, all because he says he made deposits of less than $10,000 into his account. This is the second time, by the way, that we're doing this story. We met a woman in Iowa 2 weeks ago who had the same thing happen to her. He owns Bi-County Distributors, and Jeff Hirsch joins us now with his attorney, Robert Johnson, to explain. And Robert is in Washington, D.C. Jeff is here in New York. Thank you for coming by. I know this is very traumatic. What exactly happened here when you went to the bank one day and they said you can't have your money?
In May 2012, when we went there, the bank teller said, I don't know if you want to make your deposit today. Your account has been frozen. So we didn't know what was going on. We took our deposit back, and then we were making phone calls. And that afternoon, we got a letter from the federal government saying they seized our account.
And this happened because you were making deposits of less than $10,000,
Yes.
which the government flags as possibly suspicious because it's the way drug dealers do it. So just to be clear, A, did you know that this was potentially suspicious? And B, did you do anything wrong?
No, we didn't know it was suspicious, and we definitely did nothing wrong.
Okay, so Robert, exactly how does this happen and what comes next as far as your due process rights in getting the money back for both Jeff and Carol in Iowa?
Well, what Jeff ran into is a legal regime called civil forfeiture, which allows the government to seize the property of innocent people without following the basic procedures that we associate with due process of law. It allows the government to take property without a prior hearing and without providing any notice that the property is going to be taken. And then it forces the property owner to fight to get the property back and to prove their own innocence.
So it's been 2 years now, and the money hasn't been returned yet. Why?
Well, we're still waiting for the government to commence the proceedings that would allow Jeff to have a hearing before a judge. And that's all too common in these cases. It can take years to get your first hearing before a judge.
The IRS says that it has stopped doing this. Do you believe them?
I think that what they have said is that they will no longer do it except in extraordinary cases. It remains to be seen exactly what that means. And it certainly is the case that they have not given Jeff back his money. Jeff is still fighting to get his money back.
Jeff, so how is your business holding up right now? $500,000 for a small business owner is significant.
Right. We had to lower our inventory. We do bounce checks from here and there, because the cash flow is not as great as it used to be. So it's been difficult for the family.
And does it also taint you in any way? I mean, did customers start questioning why your assets were frozen?
Now they have, because now they've seen it in the New York Times and in other publications, and we've been getting phone calls from people saying they feel bad for us, and hopefully we get the money back soon.
How does this make you feel about your own government right now that they would do this? I mean, there is no question a legitimate reason the IRS sometimes does this. But in your case, how does this make you feel?
We're very mad, because we've done nothing wrong. They never even came down to see our warehouse, what we do. We had a forensic accountant prove that nothing was going on, and it's still 2.5 years later.
Robert, do you think the money will be returned? And if it is returned, does the government have to pay interest? And can you go after the IRS for a sort of unlawful, claim here? You can go after the government when there's some malice involved.
I think what happens remains to be seen. I think that I'm very hopeful that the government will be compelled to return the money in this case. The delay is so extraordinary that I think the government simply cannot justify holding this money for over 2 years without a trial. I think we certainly will be seeking interest, and then once we have the money back, we'll be considering our next options.
Now, I understand you're from a group, Institute for Justice. I understand you're doing this pro bono?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And that's actually an important thing, because many people cannot afford a lawyer, which is why this is such a horrible practice for most people.
Have you been hearing from other people that this has happened to?
Absolutely. So I know you had on your program Carol Hinders, who's an elderly woman who had her entire bank account seized on the cusp of retirement by the IRS. And like Jeff, she did nothing wrong. We've heard from many other people who've had very similar experiences.
Jeff, does it help to, and I'll throw this out to both of you guys, does it help to contact your congresspeople? Have they done anything to help you?
No, they haven't done anything to help us.
Jeff and Robert, I'll turn to you. What do you think Congress needs to do here?
I think that Congress should do a number of things. They should look into reforming the structuring laws that Jeff has fallen victim to, but even more fundamentally, Congress needs to reform the civil forfeiture laws that provide so little process to property owners and that allow the government to take property and then make property owners prove that they have done nothing wrong.
Yeah, the burden seems to be on the wrong foot there. Robert Johnson, thank you so much. And Jeff Hirsch, appreciate you coming in. I know this is a tough story for you. Tomorrow on Arise Exchange, can a proposed vote to approve the $8 billion Keystone Pipeline from Canada pass? Let's take a look at the markets once again. The Dow closed down for the first time in 6 sessions. The S&P 500 in the red as well. The NASDAQ finished the day up. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. We'll see you tomorrow.